Let's go for a ride. That's gonna be a pain. And you naysayers out there said you're gonna be slow.
There it is right there, guys. There's your proof. 47 mile an hour in fourth gear out of a 2.6 liter Kubota.
And y'all said it was gonna be slow. Not by a long shot. This thing is so much fun to drive. God, it's so much fun. That was just fun. That was just fun. Okay, so last time I was here, you was working on the Hydro Boost, and you had a few things going on. So let's just get caught up on what you've gotten done so far.
Okay, well, I've covered a lot of ground since you was up here last. It's, you know, a little bit of time. We're coming into cold weather now. You know, we're coming into winter right before Thanksgiving. So a lot's transpired, and there's been a whole lot going on. So what I did is, it's now driving. When you was up here the last time, we set the body. You know,
Right.
We set the body. Basically, we crowned the frame, and the motor was running. But since then, it's now officially drivable.
As you've seen, that was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. We went ahead and, of course, got the alternator on. The Hydro Boost assembly is now up and going, and far exceeds what I would hoped it would do. I can't say enough about it.
Yeah, you asked me earlier. I mean, look, confession, I've already driven it one time before. You seen that opening right there. I just had to do it again. But I didn't. I've driven diesels before, but we're talking, you know, 5.9 Cummins and stuff like that. That obviously isn't in even the same realm as what this would be. So I didn't really know what to expect. I'm used to driving 4.0s, and bless your hearts, a little 2.5s. Sorry, those of you out there that I may offend. But both of my rigs are 4.0s. So I'm used to actually getting into the throttle quality bit to make it run.
Right.
This, dude, it's like as soon as you come off the throttle, it's there.
Now, as a disclaimer, and for the people on the channel, when Chuck first got up here today, The first thing I did is I put him behind the wheel of it. And I wanted him to drive it before we talked about much. I mean, me and him had been messaging back and forth. We talked on the phone back and forth. And I wanted him to actually get behind the wheel. I wanted you to see how the engine done and the hydro boost assemblies. You're wanting to do the hydro boost on Rust Bucket. I wanted you to experience that firsthand. And it's like I asked you then, I wanted your unbiased opinion on what you thought about the rig as a whole.
Yeah, because no sooner I roll in, we talk, and we shoot your stuff for a moment. He says, and I'm just like drooling on it. And he said, get up and sit down. So I get up and sit down. He said, let's go. So as you see the opening right there, we've already done it one time already. And yeah, as soon as you come off the clutch, it's there. Where the 4.0s, you really don't start making power till you get up around 2,000 RPMs on a 4.0.
Right.
This thing, as soon as that clutch grabs hold, you're there.
Right.
You're there. And the hydro boost, he said, okay, yes, I'm going to do Rust Bucket. I'm going to do hydro boost on Rust Bucket. My 91, the one you guys see on the channel the most, I'm highly thinking about doing hydro boost on it. It'll probably get it first because Rust Bucket's kind of on the back burner. I'm gathering parts for it. He gave me a frame not long ago, so I'm going to start building off that frame and change everything over onto it.
Right.
But my 91, the main star of the channel that you guys see the most, I think it's going to get hydro boost because the difference it made is absolutely unreal.
There's no comparison between the factory brakes versus the hydro boost. Where I found the information at, the guy that, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't want to be misquoting, but if I'm not mistaken, he was running his rig with 40-inch tires, and he was locking them down. This one here, this has got 33 1250s on it.
Okay.
Which it's not an overly large tire.
Right.
But as you can see, when you call on the brakes,
they're there.
They're there.
They're there.
Exactly.
And what's really crazy, this little Kubota right here, the hydro boost ain't no joke, okay? It's there when you want it. But just letting her idle and you try to push on the brakes, that Kubota says, nah, I'm pushing. It's like it wants to push through the hydro boost, and the hydro boost is fighting back, so no, you're stopping. It's a friendly little fun battle between the two, I promise you. Because the power of the hydro boost and the torque of this little diesel, this thing is just so much fun to drive.
Now, it's had very limited social media presence because the viewers for the channel have had exclusive content for everything I've done to this.
And I really appreciate that. It's been a lot of fun having this thing on the channel and hanging out with, it's been a great experience.
It's been a blast.
It really has.
But in one of the groups that we're both in, there was a lot of 900 and some odd reactions to the post with what little bit was there. And the majority of it was extremely good feedback, and there were your naysayers. And the question I got asked the most was why? Why did you do this?
Why would you do any build? Because you want to.
Because I want to.
And because you can.
Exactly. Secondly, and it was half and half. It was either going to be underpowered or it was going to be slow. Now, fourth gear coming up through here on the GPS, he hit 47 miles per hour and didn't even try, and we still had plenty to call on.
I still had plenty to go because when you see the curves and not really being totally familiar with the rig, I didn't want to try I'm not going to try to drift this thing. Obviously, it's a Jeep, but at the same time, coming into the curves, and I was not completely into it. So 47 miles an hour, and I was in fourth gear. So just let her cruise on the highway in fifth gear, no problem. This thing's it's going to be, its sweet spot, what, 1,600 RPMs is where
according to the factory specs.
Right.
It's a Tier 4 emissions engine, and with all the Tier 4 stuff on it, which I've deleted, I've got rid of the EGR. But with Tier 1, the numbers are 66 brake horsepower and 163 foot-pound of torque at 1,600 RPM.
Okay. And your 4.0s don't start making the power to 2,000 or so RPM. So this thing's sitting right in its sweet spot. This thing's got the factory 307 gears, AX15 transmission. And so if you do the math on RPMs versus engine and gearing, this thing's going to perform better than the 4.0 because of where its torque band falls at idle for this engine.
The 4.0 on the interstate, flat ground, would tack 1,600 to 1,700 RPM in fifth gear, but it would fall on its face on a hill.
Absolutely.
Now, the 4-liter builds all of its torque at 4,000 RPM, all 225 foot-pound.
Yeah.
Now, this one here, at the same RPM band, at 1,600 RPM, is where it's in the peak of its torque band, which would be fifth gear, 70 mile an hour on the interstate. I don't think I'm going to have any problem with it being slow or underpowered on hills or anything like that.
Not at all.
It's just a fun little rig to drive. When I drove it the first time, it's like you said, I was like, oh, And that's when I sent you a teaser video of it, and like I said, when you got up here, I wanted you to drive it before we got very much into it. I wanted you to drive it to see what you actually thought of it.
And trust me, first time I drove it, I was like really giggly. I loved it. You seen in the opening part of the video that I had a big case of perma-grin. You could have smacked that grin off my face. I did the first time as well, but the second time I kind of had the feel for it a little bit more, and we talked about actually getting into the throttle a little bit more. Of course, skinny pedal. I'm a throttle junkie. I'm a throttle junkie, and I'll admit that. I grew up on hot rods, race cars, seen a few drag strips a time or two, and when I get on the rocks playing, I love to be stupid. Okay, and so he said, "Give it the beans." Yes. So yeah, I got into a little bit more on that one because we was running out of the road because of curves, stuff like that. I never totally got into it.
Right.
So this thing has a lot left in it than what you guys seen in the opening part of this video.
I have no doubt that it will cruise down the interstate at 70 miles
Not a
per hour.
problem.
And around town, you'll never have to get out of fourth gear around town.
It's just fact.
I mean, it's far exceeds anything. I knew going into it that one of two things was going to be happening. I was going to be well pleased or highly disappointed, and I'm like you. I've got to, I'm carried away with it.
Oh
so.
yeah, absolutely.
But I wanted the people here on the channel that subscribe to the channel, I wanted them to see this first. And that's the reason we're here today. And like I said, it's up and running. From the last video, we're at November 26th.
6th? Yeah, I think, yeah, 6th, yeah.
I started the diesel conversion on March the 8th. And from March the 8th, we started with a rolling chassis. The body was sitting on a set of sawhorses.
Mm-hmm.
The factory drive line was sitting over in the corner, and this was sitting in a box.
Yep.
And from March the 8th to November 26th, I've done a whole lot.
Quick progress.
And more to come.
And all those things he mentioned, I've got a playlist going on this Jeep. This Jeep right here, this build has its own playlist. So I'll link it up to you guys to check out all the videos I've released. I've got one video I'm still working on, and I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I had the bright idea to using a whole bunch of cameras. So I'm having to sync all that stuff up with audio tracks. So yeah.
And has software problems in the meantime.
Yeah, and I had I had major software issues. So that video is on its way. So we've talked about the progress, had a good time driving it and stuff. What else you got coming up?
Okay, so the next step, we'll be having the exhaust done on it. I've done talked to my exhaust guy. That will be the next step on it. And then it's going to be, once I get that done, that's going to be the last major hurdle as far as anything goes like this. The brakes are tackled. Mm-hmm. We've got that done. It's roadworthy. It's on the road now. So exhaust is coming up next. I've got the remainder of the body panels. I had to get a new windshield frame. I had rot in my old windshield frame, so I've got a new windshield frame. And I've still got some body panels that are left to wrap line, which is no big deal. I've got to make a call, but that's going to be done during cold weather, and the final assembly is going to start coming down.
Gotcha.
Just for the people on the channel here, we'll kind of let a little bit of the cat out of the bag. It's going to a custom flat dash.
Okay.
And we're kind of doing a retro kind of deal with it, because everything on this, we've got rid of all the electronics on it.
Right. So all of you out there who's going to cry, well, that's just what a YJ looks like. There's nothing left of this thing that has YJ body skin and suspension, drivetrain, stuff like that. As far as all his electrical work, there's no YJ left.
No.
So there's no reason for him to keep his factory gauges. Some of you out there is purists, and I get it. I'm not being mean. I'm not being picking. I totally understand why you guys are purists. The dash, the headlights, that one makes a YJ a YJ. But this being a custom build, what he's got in mind is going to be super cool. Trust me.
And for the viewers that are YJ purists, we're keeping the squares.
Always keeping the squares.
We're keeping the squares. So
see that's I've got a really quandary on myself right at the moment. I've got a CJ dash at the house, and I thought about doing the CJ dash conversion. Right. But I'm not going to do this because I agree with the purists. I want to keep the YJ dash. And I got a grill and hood from a CJ7 the other day. So I thought, ooh, that'd be cool. Do a swap on the. No, I'm not going to do it. Keep the squares.
Yeah,
keep
right.
the squares.
Well, I'm going to keep the squares. And I've got to be different. And that's one thing. You see, all the CJs are cool.
Yes.
All of them. The way I look at Jeeps, if it's if it's a YJ, it needs to look like a YJ.
It needs to look like a YJ.
And that's the reason I love them. This is my second YJ, and like I said, I've I've pulled out all the stops on this one and more to come. So
Yeah, it's definitely a super cool build, no doubt. So earlier we were talking about the Hydro Boost.
Right.
What makes Hydro Boost so special?
okay, the YJs all come out with your vacuum assisted power booster.
Correct, right.
Now, when I converted this from the gasser to the diesel,
Right.
when I went over to the Kubota, you have very little to no vacuum off of a diesel, especially a direct inject diesel.
Exactly, right.
So the next step was to go to Hydro Boost. And what separates the two is you don't have the vacuum assisted power booster like you do with the standard YJ.
Right.
The heart of your brake system, your Hydro Boost, starts with your power steering pump. And I got the idea off a fellow Jeeper, and we've got a 1994 Astro van power steering pump, Saginaw style power steering pump, an Astro van Hydro Boost assembly, a 1983 Corvette master cylinder, a stock YJ proportioning valve,
Right.
and then a kit from a guy online that puts these kits together.
And you sent me that link, so I'll drop it down below if anybody
Right.
might be interested in doing this.
And found him on your most popular auction site online is where we found this kit.
We're not gonna. I'll just drop the link. Okay,
Yeah.
we're not gonna get into the whole name
And
calling.
that system allows you to use the stock YJ pedal. It comes with the eye, it comes with the mount, and then of course the Hydro Boost assembly yourself you have to add on.
And it's just a little bit of fabrication work.
Yeah,
nothing
just a
no big
little
deal.
bit,
Yeah.
not a whole lot.
Right.
And like I said, the heart of this system comes from a 1994 Astro van. Now I got all the parts on this. Everything that went into my brake system is brand new, with the exception of my front calipers, my front rotors, my front pads, and my rear drums. From the master cylinder through the brake lines, everything I completely went with all new. But this system right here, you drove it, you've seen the brakes. How does it compare to the factory system?
I mean, whenever you come down these brakes now, okay, with vacuum brakes, you've got that little bit of pedal travel till the vacuum diaphragm side of it kicks in, gives it the additional boost, and causes your brake pressure.
Right.
And this, as soon as you lay your foot on that pedal, it's there, okay? Now, this is my Tahoe. You guys have seen it on the channel time too, and they come up factory with Hydro Boost on it, and it does a great job. That's a big truck. This little bit lightweight YJ with Hydro Boost, it puts you on your nose if you ain't careful. I mean, it just works. It works really well.
Where I found it out online in the forum, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't want to misquote the guy, but the guy that originally did the article, I'm wanting to think that he run 40-inch tires on his rig, and that's what he was stopping with. So.
Yeah, and it would have, these are 33s, 40s, it would be no problem.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, when you get on the brakes on this, there's absolutely no comparison. To me, there's not any.
No, absolutely not. For a street-driven rig, absolutely awesome. But even with Rust Bucket, of course, it's gonna get. It's got the 14-bolt rear in it right now, and it's got the old-school drum brakes. I'm doing away with all that, going to a rear disc setup. So, of course, you're gonna need the bigger master cylinder, which this is a Corvette master cylinder here, would work fine with that 14-bolt I put in the Rust Bucket. It, of course, the bigger, more surface area you got on your pass like that, it's gonna be better, but I'm going to have a bigger axle. So on a lightweight rig like this, that he's running the factory Dana 35, Dana 30 front, it stops on a dime.
Exactly.
Now come wintertime, when it gets slick outside, stuff like that might be
and that's something I may wind up having to go to an adjustable proportioning valve before it's over. I don't know
until you're in that situation, you really don't know.
And it's going to take some miles to do that. I mean, we've still got some things to work through,
absolutely.
but for the initial run of it, to see how it is to go from concept to idea into concept to proof of concept to executing the build.
Right.
I'm well pleased.
Oh, no doubt. Now, the last time I was up here, we was working on the wiring and all that good fun stuff. You guys seen a wiring mess, and we went through all this, about the details of how to wire stuff, what this wire does and stuff. But we also mentioned that this thing follows on the GM color code.
Right.
Check out this column. And there it is. Factory Jeep steering wheel, column, all that fun stuff. And as we mentioned, there is the wiring harness we talked about in the last video. He just simply took and he had configured the wiring as per the directions stated into the plug. They just snap right in, good to go. Super easy. That wiring harness is an absolute lifesaver.
Yes, it's been super easy. Everything's wired in. The fuel shutoff solenoid's wired in. The only wiring pretty much left to do is firewall forward, and that'd be for lighting and for the fan circuit. Aside from that, the alternator's up and running. We're charging at 14.5 volts under load.
Okay.
Starts, shuts off with the key. It's starting off the column just like it's supposed to do. rear turn signals work, the rear brake lights work, the rear running lights work. If you apply power, I've not got the headlight switch in it yet, but the backup lights work. All that's now working. So
I didn't even notice you didn't have your fan even hooked up, did you?
no, it's not even hooked up. Like I said, it will run with the temperatures we're at now. It's a 180-degree thermostat, and that's right about where it runs.
And if I remember some of our discussion, we just texted back and forth, even had a phone conversation that it doesn't get warm enough.
Yeah, when I first got the radiator, it had the thermal switch with it, and I installed it. Well, first time I had filled the radiator up, I was going to let the thermostat open up on it, let the thermostat cycle. The fan kicked on. And it was still cold as ice. And I wound up having to unhook the fan, and I thought it was a problem with my thermostat. No, it was a 165-degree switch that it came with. And what was happening is it was kicking on before the thermostat opened. It wouldn't let the thermostat open up. Now, we took and unhooked it from the switch, and I was going to wire it direct to battery if need be. And what we did is we used an infrared thermometer before I put a actual temperature gauge on it. I've got a temperature gauge mocked up on it now to where I can see what it's running at. But when the thermostat opened up, I turned the fan on, and it dropped at 10 degrees in 10 seconds. So it's got more than enough fan. I'm going to wind up having to use like probably a potentiometer, pulse wave setup, something like that to dial it down.
We were back and forth at night. Both of us was like doing research on different ways we could slow that fan down without actually getting one of the, I think it's a brushless style, so that can be adjustable.
Exactly. But what I'm going to wind up doing is, in the wintertime, you
don't need it.
Exactly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a 200-degree thermal switch in. It kicks on at 200, off at 185. That way, if it does get up under load, it does get up warm enough, it's going to kick it on, and it'll do that without cycling and shutting off the thermostat. It'll allow the thermostat to still circulate, but it'll cool it down. And you can feel the difference when you kick the fan on. You can put your hand behind the fan, and you can feel it go from warm to cold in just a few seconds, and it doesn't take long.
And that's just basically one of those Amazon.
Yeah, it's an Amazon special. Like I said, I didn't get it through Amazon. I found it local.
Yeah, and you found it local, and I bought the other one.
Yeah. A lady does pallet deals. She bought a pallet of return stuff. This one was unopened, brand new, unopened with the fan. And of course, we got one for you that didn't have the fan at a heck of a steal. But yeah, I can't. It's a 3-row radiator, and like I said, in the wintertime, I'm probably going to wind up having to put a bra on the front of it to
restrict that air, like the truckers do.
Exactly. If not, I'm not going to have any heat.
Well, as a matter of fact, my dad used to have an old International Scout. He used to cut a piece of cardboard.
Exactly. And that's probably what we want to do, because like I said, that 3-row radiator, I mean, you'll never have to worry about it again, because it'll run right at about 180. That's where it'll sit there and it'll hold. About 180. And especially like on a day like today, it's only in the mid to upper 40s. Yeah, you're not.
No problems.
Exactly. So, yeah. And as far as starting up the wiring and stuff like that, we can show people how easy the thing starts up.
Yeah. Kind of go through. There is a tiny bit of a sequence to it. Basically, you turn the key on, you listen for the pump to kick in, you hear the little rattle thing they do, the pump build up the pressure, bump that key, she fires every time. It is so dialed in good. Let's just do it.
Let's do it. Okay, we're in neutral.
Okay, he's going to turn the key on.
Hear the pump run?
Hear the pump running, yep.
Whoop.
Oh, really? That got cold, that's what it is. Yeah. So Jeremy, I really appreciate you inviting me up here again to get a little update video on this awesome rig. This thing is just so cool.
Well, we appreciate being part of the crew, and thank you for having me on the channel with you. It's been a treat. I mean, it's been a treat. I've had a ball.
It's absolutely awesome. There's so much more to come with it. So
stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and leave some cool comments on what you think about this awesome diesel rig. Or two crazy people driving down the road.
With no top, no doors, no windshield.
It's cold outside. Anyway, thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't. And comments. Yeah, peace. Later, y'all.